المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة خذنا على درب الأمل زمر باص المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة خذنا على درب الأمل.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Shakira Akabo and you are watching Schools Out. In today's episode, we are discussing the mental and emotional health of our learners. We know as educators that the mental and emotional state of our learners affects their learning and achievement. To tell us more about this issue today, we are chatting to Dr. Nazmira Khamisa, who is a psychiatrist in Pretoria. Welcome to the show, Dr. Khamisa.
Thank you for having me, Shakira.
Okay, tell us, what exactly is the emotional and mental health of our learners?
So, looking at children nowadays under a lot of stress, if you look at historically, these days children have so much to deal with. Academic pressures, sometimes people move schools, parental fighting, the parental divorce rate is higher, so children have a lot more to deal with. Bullying at schools, so there's quite a bit that they have to deal with emotionally and from a psychological point of view. So emotional mental disorders lie on a spectrum. Some children cope fine with these things, and this is determined often by their resilience, their coping skills, and their support as well, family support and support from schools. So some children may develop emotional disturbances, which means they have difficulty coping with a particular situation and exhibit some psychological symptoms. Others on the spectrum can develop into much more severe disorder, and that is when it's called a mental disorder. And that would usually be a diagnosis, which often needs a treatment plan and a lot more intervention. And the statistics are quite high. I mean, they say that like 1 in 10 children nowadays have a serious emotional disturbance, and 1 in 4 have a mental disorder. So we need to have our radars up and be very, very aware and conscious and look out for these, because these children feel alone.
Right. Those are quite alarming statistics that you mentioned.
Yes.
So as parents and even as educators, what do we need to look out for?
So looking at children, they often won't approach people with problems. Often, we need to look for signs and symptoms. So these can include changes in sleep, appetite, extreme weight loss, isolating themselves from their friends and family, changes in behavior. So this can range from somebody sort of just becoming extremely shy and withdrawn to becoming aggressive or violent or irritable anger outbursts. And also academic performance. So if you see that a child's grades are dropping, it's not necessarily that the child is not working and that we should put more pressure on them. We should sometimes consider other things. I mean, look at, for example, physical illnesses as well. I mean, we must exclude something like a thyroid disorder, or check their blood sugar levels, things like that. But once those things have been excluded, we do need to consider that there might be something else going on which is affecting the academic performance.
So is there anything that perhaps we can do? Is there perhaps schools can support learners in some way or do something to help them?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that is so important is that if a family is aware that their child is going through something like this,
right,
tell the school. Discuss it with someone that you trust, their class teacher, a school counselor, a psychologist at school if they have one, so that the child at school can also be supported and that they can also be aware of what is going on and be more supportive rather than pushing the child more. And then also at schools, bullying awareness, mental health awareness programs.
Right.
So this is a huge thing that is being rolled out, like in the US, in other places, where they train teachers. So teachers are trained to recognize signs and symptoms of mental illness, trained to support these children, look for the specific signs, like, for example, a girl in class, suddenly her grades drop. She comes to school disheveled, hair is not combed, not being with her friends anymore, sort of just no eye contact. So a teacher could, ignore those things and think maybe she's just in a bad mood, or if she's trained, could say these are potentially signs that this girl is in trouble. And then obviously, seeing that her grades are dropping, often, you think they must work harder. But then in this case, you would look at, okay, does this child need help? get her the help, and we can then get her back on track and get her back, because academic performance affects their futures and their lives.
Yes, absolutely. So much hinges on it.
Yes.
You mentioned mental health disorders in children. Can you give us some examples of what are commonly found amongst children?
Okay, so the most common mental disorder in children is anxiety disorders.
Okay.
So we have like 30%, just more than 30% of children have anxiety disorders, which is alarming actually when you think about it. 1/3 of children have an anxiety disorder.
That is quite
or
frightening.
problem with anxiety.
Yes.
And then behavioral disorders. So this includes like conduct disorder, which means, or oppositional defiant disorder, which means difficulties in behavior. So aggression, rebellious behavior, and that can often lead to substance abuse, which is number 4 on our list. But the third most common disorder is mood disorders. So this includes depression. So depression in children, which we often don't think about.
Yeah, we wouldn't even consider
Yes.
children can get depressed.
Exactly. So it's a very, very common disorder, and it has such debilitating effects on them. And then we have substance use disorders, children using drugs and alcohol, which often are comorbid with the other conditions, because children then tend to do those things in response to the way they're feeling. And then ADHD. We all know about that.
Yes.
That's also on the rise.
Okay. You mentioned childhood depression. What about treatment options? Obviously we're not going to now, I think parents would be very reluctant to medicate their children.
Yes.
What are the options if you suspect that your child is or could be depressed?
So I think parents initially just looking at the warning signs and being aware, and then opening up lines of communication with their child, practicing non-judgment, so that the child doesn't feel judged, and it feels more comfortable approaching their parents. And once you have a serious suspicion, I think firstly talk to the school, so that you can get teachers and people at school involved, and probably a school counselor would be a good place to start. And then thinking about also at home, adequate sleep, nutrition, exercise, art, for example, something creative for them where they can, have this creative expression, and it is very therapeutic. And then, of course, depending on where the child is on the spectrum, a child psychologist, play therapist, occupational therapist. We often overlook that.
Okay.
But some children are just very sensitive. So sensitive to the environment, sensitive to sound, light, things, and it disturbs them a lot more than others. So this is something to think about as well. And then once you've done all of that, if you have a whole team of professionals and the school and the parents and people have assessed this child and feel that, okay, the child is extremely unwell and they do need to be on medication, possibly, that's when they would end up at a psychiatrist.
So more like a last attempt or the last resort, really.
It shouldn't be our first line in children, of course, but it depends on risk as well.
Okay.
So we often look at a risk assessment is a huge thing in mental health. Is there a risk of harm to the self? Is the child wanting to harm themselves? Are they talking about suicide, not wanting to live, not wanting to be here, or becoming aggressive to other people, animals, destruction of property? So when there's risk of harm to the self or harm to others, then obviously it needs to be escalated. And then you need to think seriously about medication, or even a child being hospitalized for assessment, looking at, obviously, like I said earlier, it's so important looking for the physical illnesses.
Right.
Thyroid problems. I keep saying that because it's a silent killer, actually. You don't realize that people are not functioning just because of something like that.
Right.
So yes. So depending on the situation, it depends on whether children need to be medicated.
And given that teachers are the first line of defense, really, so teachers obviously play a very important role in this helping to figure out if the child is struggling emotionally or has some kind of mental health issue. What advice could you give to teachers?
Absolutely. The school has a central role because it's just perfectly placed. It's the most sensible place where you would have an intervention. Children spend most of their time at school. So teachers, I think mental health awareness programs, so teachers can be trained to look for the signs and the symptoms.
Right.
Like, for example, we were talking about like changes in behavior, changes in
Yes.
weight, changes in the way they interact with other children, their grades
Right.
declining. So, you know, there's a lot of things, a lot of clues that teachers can pick up from
Right.
during the day when kids are at school. And if you combine that with what's happening at home and the parents and the teachers collaborate, it's much
Yes.
easier to put things together.
If everyone's on the same page.
Yes,
Okay.
because a lot of the time we look for discrepancies or difficulties in more than one environment.
Right. Okay.
So it might be that at school a child has difficulties, but at home that there's nothing. And if that's the case, then we need to look at the school. However, if things they show these difficulties across different settings, we do need to be much more aware that it's possibly an emotional or a mental disorder.
Okay, thank you for your insight, Dr. Khamisa, on mental and emotional health issues. Thank you for your time on the show.
Thank you for having me, Shakira.
Okay, and that was Dr. Khamisa. After the break, we will visit 2 schools which have support programs for their learners' emotional health. Stay with us.
زمر باص المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة زمر باص المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة.
Welcome back to Schools Out. Now we are chatting to the principal of Nizamiya School Mayfair in Johannesburg about his unique learner support program at his school. Welcome to the show, Mr. Turkman. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Okay, tell me about your unique program of learner support at your school.
Well, this program is unique in the sense that it doesn't, it's just a little different than the psychologist and the therapist's program. It is not to remediate the learner's situation. It is rather help the learner's performance without having to have any need for remediation. Now it has 2 aspects. The main one is the in-school one, where we engage learner on either on group activities or group meetings or one-on-one meetings. And it also has an extension of family visits that we see the learner's environment, family environment at home of the child. So it works hand in hand. Besides these ones, in this support system we have other activities outside the school, like camping, picnic, excursions, outings, and they all form part of this program.
You mentioned home visits. So your staff and yourself visit the learners in their homes with their parents?
Yes, we do. It is, within our program, we usually have it once a year, or at least minimum once a year. We desire to have it once a year. The first thing that comes to people's mind is whether it is imposed upon the family or not. But we know we do not cause any form of imposition. It is requested, and if the family would like to have us as their guest, then we go to their homes. The purpose of it is, we have a parent-teacher meeting where the teacher explains the performance and the behavior of the learner to the parent in the school. Now this one is at an extensive level taking place at their homes. So we go and give a feedback to the family in their home environment as to the performance of the learner, not only in the academics but in behavior as well. Challenges that the learner might be facing in the school, individually, academically, behavioral-wise, emotionally. So we actually give a feedback to the family in the home environment.
And how has the response been from the learners and the parents to your home visit program? And are the learners present at the meeting?
It is a normal family environment, like we are the guests and they are the hosts.
Okay.
And usually the response that we receive would be on the surface value, as it would be. They are having a guest and we are the guest of theirs. So
Right.
they offer tea, coffee. We offer normal chit chat around the day-to-day issues. it is not seen as one of those clinical lab type consultation session.
Right.
However, they certainly feel the difference in a way that when they need a piece of information, they realize they already have it. Even if they don't, they start acting on the information that we have given on our visits. For example, if there was an issue of the performance of a learner in mathematics, now it is just discussed over a cup of tea, but then they will still act on that one, that we have to do something about that one, without actually taking note that this one was a formal official visit in our environment. If there's a problem of the child fitting into the classroom, or if there is a personal clash between the learner and another friend of his or hers in the classroom, so these would be addressed. The family would find this one not in a way to complain about the classroom environment, but they would just share it. And then we act on that one, saying that this learner has this kind of issue in the classroom, so we have to do something about that. So it is very much without much of a notice or attention being drawn upon it. It just naturally happens. The system naturally flows into people's lives. As I said, for example, there would be other points of promoting the extracurricular activities that we're having in the school. For example, science fair is a good example of that one that our school takes pride in. We try to encourage learners to partake in it. It's a lot of work, not only from the child side, from the family side as well, and it requires a huge amount of commitment from them. Now, if it is just left, if the communication is left through the learners, then it gets dissipated on the way, and we are not able to get the results. But through these communications and conversations, we manage to get the learners partake in it, get ready for it, prepare for this one, and alhamdulillah, getting good results out of it. If it is international trips or competitions that we have to motivate our learners for, it also works in the same way. The Olympiad studies works also in the same way, so and so forth. So, or sports activities as well. So it is benefiting the learners in various ways in terms of motivation, as well as corrective measures to help the learner's problem solve.
Earlier on, you had mentioned, whilst we were chatting, that learners might drop out of school, but the home visits helps actually to keep them in.
It is not home visit is not a singular cause of that one, but you see, you're seeing the learner on a day-to-day basis in the classroom, not on a teaching level, but on friendly environment, friendly terms. And then in the home environment, you become their guest, and they serve you tea and so on. So you create that kind of bond with the learner, and the learner creates that bond with you. So if there's a problem that arises in the learner's sphere, then the learner has a beacon to go to or to look up to resolve the issues, to solve the problems.
Right.
Now, regardless of the level of the problem or the seriousness of the problem, that beacon would keep the learner within the fold of education. And there are multiple examples of it that one can count in the history.
Thank you so much for sharing with us your learner support program that provides emotional and behavioral support to the learners and to the families. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. Jazakallah.
And that was Mr. Farooq Turkman, principal of Nizamiya School in Mayfair, Johannesburg. Now we're going to go to another school with an emotional support program. Stay with us.
سمر باص المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة سمر باص المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة.
We are now chatting to Mr. Yusuf Sali, principal of Two Oceans Leadership Academy in Grassy Park, Cape Town. His school has an amazing intervention program for the learners' emotional needs. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sali.
Shukran so much for having me.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So tell us about your program that you have.
I think the first thing that's of importance in terms of our school is to know that our school adopts an interfaith approach to teaching and learning, where we really use spirituality as a vehicle to effect meaningful, sustainable and deep change within our learners. So all of our Muslim learners on a weekly basis, they receive 3 lessons of Islamic studies per week, and our non-Muslim learners receive 3 lessons of divinity studies per week. But I have to say, without a doubt, our most impactful program in terms of providing our learners with emotional support takes place in our principles and values lessons, which takes place over 2 lessons per week. In these lessons, our Muslim learners and our non-Muslim learners, they come together and they sit in a circle, not in your usual positioning in terms of seating. Right. And we have a facilitator and a co-facilitator present with them. And in these lessons, we provide them with a platform to really be able to engage openly and honestly with one another. We provide them with a platform to be able to engage on some of the challenges that they may be experiencing in their lives, whether it's challenges that's taking place in their home life, perhaps on the playground or in class, where they can really just openly and honestly and in a safe environment begin to just share a bit about what they are thinking and what they are feeling. And we find that purely and merely just providing them with a platform to be able to engage, we find that these young leaders, and we refer to our learners at our school as young leaders. Okay. We find that these young leaders really engage on such a deep and profound level purely because we gave them the platform to be able to do so. Another key characteristic of our principles and values lessons is that it gives our learners an opportunity to really have difficult conversations with one another, to confront certain issues with one another. And a typical example is, let's say one of our female learners was called maybe some nasty names during break. She then has an opportunity within a collective setting with her peers to address the name caller, to tell the name caller how she has felt, how it affected her at that time. We also then allow other learners to perhaps speak about their own feelings of when they were perhaps bullied or fell victim to name calling, and in doing so normalizing the emotions that comes with that kind of experience. And in so doing, we also allow the name caller to be able to take responsibility for his or her actions in a non-invasive manner, in a non-punitive manner, in a safe environment. Because at our school, we make it clear to our learners that we expect them to make mistakes. Right. We even go so far as to tell them that it is their job to make mistakes. But we insist, and it is non-negotiable for them to take responsibility for their mistakes, to learn from their mistakes, and to commit to doing things differently in their lives. So our approach is very preventative in measure as opposed to curative in measure. We provide a platform that is open, honest, safe, non-invasive, where learners are able to tap into their emotion, share their emotion, take ownership of their emotion, and commit to doing things differently in their lives. Not better, because that would assume an air of negativity, but doing things differently in their lives and strive for excellence in their lives.
Okay, sounds amazing. How did you notice, or what did you notice in terms of the children's response to the program?
It's been absolutely amazing. I think it goes back to what I was saying about what happens when you just provide kids with a platform to be able to voice what they've been feeling. We see, for example, immense improvement in their confidence. We see them being able to voice what they are feeling and what they are thinking in a healthy manner, as opposed to what usually happens when they don't have that outlet. It usually manifests in an unhealthy decision-making process, or in an unhealthy manifestation in terms of behavior, whether it be backchatting, or in an extreme situation, whether they gravitate towards gangsterism or drugs. At our school, we want to be conscious and purposeful about providing them with a positive outlet for what they are feeling and what they are thinking. And something that we shouldn't be really surprised about, but something that really made us feel proud of ourselves and proud of our young leaders, is that we've seen an immediate improvement in their academic results. Because if you give a learner a platform to engage on what's really eating them a bit up inside, yes, and it allows them to free themselves of that, it broadens them up on an emotional level, on a psychological level, to really excel academically. So we're very chuffed about that, and we're so immensely proud of our young leaders.
Tell us now, how has the learners' parents and the community at large, how have they responded to this?
We don't even like to categorize them as our parents or community anymore. We really see our Tola family as being one big family. In fact, one of my colleagues, she uses a wonderful analogy which she describes the Tola family as being one big puzzle, with each of our constituents serving as individual puzzle pieces, each unique in their color, in their size, in their shape, in their dimension. But she goes on to say that the true potential of each of these puzzle pieces can only come together or be fulfilled when they come together to form this whole picture. And that the picture remains incomplete with even just one missing puzzle piece. So at our school, we leave no puzzle piece behind, and we ensure that everyone feels included. But in terms of our parent body, they've really sort of echoed what we've seen at our school. They've seen that the young leaders go home with heightened and improved levels of confidence. They see how the young leaders sometimes come to them and say, Mom, we need to have a difficult conversation. We need to sit in a circle. I need to tell you how I'm feeling. And it's in fact the parents that are now having to re-educate themselves on how to deal with this new, empowered, liberated young leader. And of course, they usually appreciate the academic results and the academic output that these kids are now producing as a direct result of them being able to just liberate themselves through conversation, through a difficult, open and honest engagement. So now they are part and parcel of our DNA, and they are most certainly our family.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like you have a program that really works at your school.
Yeah, we're very grateful. Thank you so much. And thank you for providing us with a platform to be able to share that. And our school really adopts an open door policy. We're not about competition, we're about collaboration. And we open our doors to anyone who would like to come and visit with us and just engage with us.
Okay. Jazakallah khair.
Shukran so much.
And that was Mr. Yusuf Saleh, Principal of Two Oceans Leadership Academy in Grassy Park, Cape Town. That's all we have time for today. We hope you found the episode informative and useful. Join us again next week. Till then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
سمر باص المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة خدنا على درب الأمل سمر باص المدرسة صوت على قلبي عسل يلا يا باص المدرسة خدنا